What I've been doing these past few months is continually redefining how we look at and how we define terms and experiences that we have in the world. I spoke about evil being asleep. That, when we have an awakened consciousness, evil doesn't exist. I've never met anybody with an awakened consciousness who didn't emit goodness. And that just means that anybody who's not there doing something different, that means they're asleep. And that's why we here speak about awakening consciousness through spiritual community, because we know that an awakened consciousness is goodness itself. I've talked about selfishness being simply self-care done badly. That if we saw it that way, we'd do more to support people who are selfish, to learn how to take care of themselves in a good way instead of how it comes across. And then last week we talked about, We talked about defining, how you define yourself. And how what comes after I am is like the most important thing in the world in terms of how you define you. And all these things are about immersing ourselves in truth, the real truth. We have these experiences in life, and we think they're truth, when there's a deeper truth that when we are in touch with actually changes our experience. In fact, ultimately changes the results we get in life. People who come to this teaching, they show up for the first time and, they listen to my talks or somebody else's talks or whatever, and they get into this. They start recognizing that there's something more going on and that it holds a deeper peace in the midst of what can look like an incredibly chaotic world. The more you're here, the more you begin to take classes. And one of the things that happens when you take your first class is you experience a shift that makes it look like life has this grace and ease to it. And so the next thing that happens for some folks who are in this teaching is they think, life can be so grace and ease if I get really deep into this. No. Life does get easier, but not the way most people think. Life gets more peaceful, but not the way most people think. It's not about what's happening out there. It's about what's happening in here, and because of what's happening in here, out here shifts. In sailing, they have this, if you're in a sailboat, some people think what you need is to have the wind going in the direction you want to go. In life, people think that everything's working when the wind's at your back and everything's going the way you want to go. But in fact, this teaching is a lot like sailing. When the wind is blowing from the shore, and you want to get into the shore, if you try to go straight for it, your boat's going over. That's like running into a brick wall in life. Finding obstacles in your way. But sailors know that the way to get into shore when the wind is blowing out from the shore is by what's called tacking, which means you go way out of your way this way, shore's here, way out of your way, then that way, and then back again. And imperceptibly, you moved into the shore with a wind that is blowing you out. When you get deep into this teaching, you're kind of doing that. You find whichever way the wind blows, you know how to use it as an opportunity to get where you want to go, even if it means it looks like you're going the wrong way. Tacking. But when you first get into this, maybe you don't see that so much. You're looking for the grace and ease instead of working with whatever is going on in such a good way that things work out. Things just work out. And when you immerse yourself in this truth, the deeper you immerse yourself in this truth, the more you recognize it doesn't even matter what's going on. Things are going to work out. A few weeks ago at the men's circle, at the men's circle were two Trevors. One is a really tall guy, about here, about 6 inches taller than me, maybe more. The other one's about my height. So I'm going to call this one Tall Trevor and the other one Plumber Trevor, just so we can, you know who I'm talking about during what I'm about to share. So Tall Trevor says at the end of the men's circle, there's no water coming out of the sink in the bathroom over here. So Plumber Trevor and I go check it out, and we go try looking for pipes, and we can't really find the shutoffs for it or nothing. So I call John, the president of the board, leave him a message saying, hey, there's no water coming out of the sink. What do you think? What needs to happen here? And so a few hours later, I hear back from John. And the thing about it is the second I heard that there was not water coming out of the sink, my first thought was not, there's a problem. My first thought was, no big deal. This is some sort of opportunity, don't know what it's going to look like, but it's not going to be a big deal. Really, that was my first thought, because I really work at immersing myself in truth. And that's what it takes. You know, I've heard people say, one of the things that happens that I hear people say a lot is, well, there's your consciousness, and then there's boots on the ground and getting stuff done, as if they're separate things. But when you're in this teaching long enough, you learn they're not separate things. They're the same thing going on all the time if you can recognize it, if you can be with it. So John gets back to me and says, what we got to do is take out the tiles, and the actual pipes are in the ceiling above the bathroom. So if you remove the pipes, the heat will rise and that'll unfreeze the pipes. So I come back in and I go back there and I start pulling out the tiles, and the first thing I notice is a small leak in the pipe. And so I go get a waste paper basket and I put it under the leak. And then there was a second leak, and I went and got a second waste basket and put under there. And then I'm standing there and the pipe explodes. And I'm looking at Niagara Falls. And the first thing I thought to myself is, this looks cool as all get out. And it's no big deal. Somehow this works out. I don't know how, I don't know nothing about plumbing, but I knew that it did. And I just kept with immersed in truth, no big deal. Got John on the phone, said we got Niagara Falls going on here. He says, well, the shutout is in the basement. And so he leads me to get the key. I go down to the basement, and I put in the key, and it's not turning. And he goes, well, you got to jiggle it. So I'm jiggling the key, hearing the water upstairs, Niagara Falls, thinking to myself, somehow this is all going to work out. No big deal. Finally, it turns. I get in. I shut off the water. I go up to find a lake in the kitchen, starting to spill over a little into the hallway. John says he's on his way over to help. I call Trevor, Plumber Trevor, and he gets back to me and says he's on his way over. And here's the best part about this story. Trevor says to me, I had these other plans that I would not have been available, but for some reason, didn't do that. and didn't know why I was being nudged not to do that, where I would not have been available. That synchronicity is around us all the time, every moment of every day. That's what's there. When we immerse ourselves in truth and know, no big deal. So I get the shop vac out of the garage, sloop up about 30 to 40 gallons of water within less than a half hour. Trevor comes over, he caps off the pipes, he finds the shut-off downstairs so that we can have water to the rest of the building, just cutting off that section, so that Sunday I was able to get up here and say, that bathroom is out of order, but the rest of the place is. Trevor did that. Then he comes back, wait, let me finish, and then you can applaud him because you're going to applaud him. 3 days later, he comes back, finishes up and fixes, it took him 20 minutes, and it's like done, right? And he gets the pipes all back working and everything, and then he says, this is my service to the sacred service to the center. It's my donation, no charge. Now you can applaud. Thank you, Trevor. That's what life looks like when you are immersed in truth. It isn't that things don't happen. It's that how they turn out has a flow to it that you could never imagine if you're willing to be immersed in truth. That's how it goes. And the more you immerse yourself in this stuff, the more amazing it gets. It's incredibly beautiful. This week, we had a practitioner meeting. And I delivered some information in not my best way. I came across authoritative, like I was giving orders. And Catherine was kind enough to point that out to me after the meeting, that I had done that. And what I realized when she was talking to me about what I had done wrong was that I was happy to hear it. I didn't get defensive. I didn't get my back up. I was like, oh, this is great information. This is really helpful. And today I recognize that I don't carry around shame anymore. None of it. And that's why I can be open and not be defensive and allow people. And so it's not like I'm not going to do stuff wrong. I told Catherine, this won't be the last time I screw up. Thank you. I need you to point this out to me. And I just recognize my own sense of no shame, no guilt, no defensiveness. I have not always been this way. It was an incredibly new experience that I recognized in myself this morning. That's how it works. You keep immersing yourself in the truth, and you find yourself free. I felt so free to not have to worry about being defensive, to being open to whatever feedback comes my way to support me in doing the best I want to do in the world. You see what I'm saying here? Does this make sense? Because it's not about not doing nothing wrong or messing up or any of that stuff. It's not about stuff out here not going badly or whatever. It's about how you respond to it, how you are with it, and allowing the synchronicity of life to show up for you. Because I can promise you, if you're not open to it, you'll miss it. And you'll be back to hitting walls, obstacles. Things feel so hard. I have had that experience of life feeling so hard. And I don't anymore. And it's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary shift to when you start feeling so free about whatever the circumstances are. We were in Burbank, Ash and I was the spiritual leader at the center in Burbank. And it was heavy lifting the whole time. So much so that one of my first talks there, and we had about somewhere between 30 and 40 people showing up. As I'm in the middle of my talk, there are two people screaming at each other in the hallway. So loud that everybody's turned around and look at them. Nobody's paying attention to me. And I go out there to find it's the administrator and the AV person yelling at each other at the top of their lungs in the hallway. I pulled them into the office, settled them down, went back and finished my talk, and that is just one example of the heavy lifting that I did at that center. I was there. It took 3 years of zero growth, just getting the place straight, so that people weren't yelling at each other anymore, so that there was some healing going on. Beginning the 4th year, we finally started seeing some growth. We saw some days that there were 50, 60 people. And then COVID hit. And we were shut down, just as we were beginning to show growth. A month after we were shut down, the landlord called to say he was doubling the rent when there was no income coming in. A month after that, the board voted to shut the place down. Now, some people might walk away from that feeling like they failed, disappointed. I mean, that was 3.5 years of my life poured into that. But Ash and I, we looked at that, recognized that what we're doing here is got to be an opportunity to immerse ourselves deeper in the truth. Something greater is going to come of this. And so we did that and had an amazing time during COVID. So amazing, in fact, we had fun. We had so much fun with each other. It was great being stuck in the house together. We made a video about what you could do at home during COVID, got 197,000 hits. We did this other one on good news. You know, there was so much bad news going on. So we did another little video on good news, 160-something thousand hits. I mean, we were having a ball. And then we decided to move to Asheville. We moved to Asheville, and John, the spiritual leader there, asked me to become the music director. And so I did that, and shortly after that announces he's retiring and does his best to set me up as the next spiritual leader there in Asheville. Because I'd done all this. Asheville was where I took all the classes, became a practitioner. It was out of the Asheville Center that I went and started ministerial school. And so it just seemed like the right place for me that I would be their next senior, next spiritual leader. The board didn't want any of that. They were clear that they wanted something that I was too much like John, and they wanted something completely different. Now, while all this was going on, Ash and I decided, because thought we were spending the rest of our days in Asheville, we found a house we wanted to buy. And so we went in and we put in an offer, and it was accepted, and we were going in to close on this house. And a week before closing, the mortgage company called and said, sorry, the approval fell through. After everything looked perfect. Now, some people might have thought of that as being disappointing because we loved the house. But Ash and I, we dug down into our deepest heart and knew that somehow this works for us. We didn't know how. We didn't know what was next. And when the center decided not to hire me as the senior minister, we did not get disappointed. We kept going down. Okay, there's something greater here. This is what works when you do that, when you're immersed in this truth. It isn't like all these things go great out there. I mean, this was one thing after the next that didn't look like things were going great, except we kept holding that it was in a way we could yet to see. And then there's the day comes where there's this email about the Seattle CSL. And so I checked into it, and we had an interview, and they looked like they were interested, and I thought I might be interested in them. And while I was on the website looking at the open pulpit listening for Seattle is when I noticed that there was an open pulpit in Edmonton. And I thought, Edmonton? It looks pretty far north. But I thought, all right, let's find out what they're about. And when we came up in August, Ash and I looked at each other and said, this is it. The one place we would have never anticipated, never thought, has become for me home, become for us home, in a way that I have never experienced in my life. It could look like disappointment after disappointment after disappointment, but we didn't hold it that way. And because we didn't hold it that way, we stayed open that this must be leading to something greater. And nothing in my life besides my son being born and marrying this one has been greater in my life than being here with you. This has been an extraordinary experience for me. I get up laughing most days about how incredible it is to be here with you. This is what's possible when we are willing to immerse ourselves in truth and not take on what that experience might be in our reasonable minds or in the way we feel hurt, trespassed. I could have been really hurt by how they treated me in Asheville, but I wasn't, because I knew that something like this must be possible, and I just didn't have to worry that I didn't see it. And that's what's possible for you. Freedom from guilt and shame, freedom from feeling hurt by what's going on out here, and then results that feel extraordinary. This has been my journey. This has been real for me. And I share it in the deepest of ways, knowing that I'm not extraordinary. We all are. I'm no more extraordinary than any of you sitting here. You all have this in you to be in work, in play, in life, in a way that feels extraordinary as I'm feeling it. I want you to feel it that way. I hold that you will and that you can. This is what's possible. I love you guys so much, all of you. And I am just so happy to be here with you. Immerse yourself in truth. Take these classes as they come up. It's worth it. It's really something. And it just keeps going. Just this week, again, for me. It's a never-ending, awesome unfoldment. I really don't know how else to put it. It just feels so amazing. This is what life can be. I'm sorry? We're pretty happy you're here too. Well, good. We'll enjoy each other together. Thank you. I love you all so much.